Welcome back to the BestWorst14 podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. My next guest, I'm super excited to have him. He's an artist and educator, which is something that's so connected to my background in the world that I love. But he's moved on, and he's also the CEO and creator of Cruxe, which is a brand that is focused on bringing modern functionality with distinctive design to hair tools and accessories. But he's so much more than that, and so I'm super excited to hear about not only that business, but other ventures he's involved in. Based currently in Brooklyn, New York, he's had well over a decade in the world of hair, working with some of the top stylists, brands, celebrities, and models around the world. And I, in our earlier conversation, I was impressed and actually kind of jealous of all the world traveling that he's done. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, his path to success was really untraditional in his field, but the support of family and others that he garnered along the way have really come together to create this amazing career. You can follow him at Drew Schaefering on Instagram and Twitter, and drewschaefering.com and cruxebrand.com online. Actually, just to spell his last name is SCHAEFERING, or check our link in the bio for more of a description of his website. Welcome, Drew Schaefering.
Thanks so much, Josh, for quite an introduction. I appreciate it. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. And I got to say, I've become pretty adept at LinkedIn stalking, and checking out all your content online. And so I'm super impressed. And let me just say, I know this is going to be audio, but this is a gorgeous human being. I don't know how you were created, but I could just appreciate all that. You got a lot going for you.
Thank you, man. I have nothing to do with that. That's on my parents. I give them the credit.
Well, let's give shout out to your parents then. So listen, like I said, I've been able to do some research on you, but if you could tell us a little bit more about like all the things you're doing, your current role, Cruxe. I know you have some other ventures that you're working on.
Yeah, so currently I'm living in Brooklyn, New York, and what's brought me to New York has been working behind the chair with clients. And so I'm currently back behind the chair after a little bit of a hiatus and taking clients at a salon in Williamsburg called Rob Betum. And it's been great there. It's a whole new adjustments post-COVID. And, we could talk a little bit more about that. And I have a photo shoot and editorial background that started with fashion. And I started coming to New York, working fashion weeks. And that led to this interest of working fashion editorials and doing photo shoots and kind of having this nomadic freelance lifestyle that I now am finding myself living. And in between those two hair worlds, I started a brand a little over 3 years ago called Cruxe, and I'm currently doing the majority of the engine driving with that. It's the team is growing, and it's been a labor of love and a hard balance with all of my other ventures. So it's definitely growing, and we just are launching in Mexico as of last week, and so things are continuing to evolve. And so I'm finding I'm having to play two very different hats with those, the creative and keeping my mind in that realm, and then also stepping back and allowing myself to take a view from 30,000 feet, looking at where things are going and how everything can evolve. And that's pretty much where everything's been living. For the pre-COVID, I was traveling significantly. I would say I probably traveled three to four times a month. Whether those were day trips to do workshops for L'Oreal Professional or my private education classes and salons, or maybe a photo shoot when I was in LA for 15 days shooting. And so I really was adjusted to this idea and lifestyle of traveling and working and having this on the go energy that flows. And I'm now finding myself with a little bit more energy post, this year traveling the least since I've been working. So it's been a different adjustment, but it's been interesting to be able to see silver linings and things start to show up.
That's incredible. So tell me, this balancing act that you talked about earlier, that really stood out to me, of having this 30,000 foot view, of being a business owner and an entrepreneur. At the same time, you have this requirement of having to be on the ground. And so how do you balance those two worlds?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I do it very effectively or efficiently. I think that the hardest part is systems and consistency to lean on. I find that if if I don't set aside time to plan things out or map out what needs to be done, certain things don't get done. And the challenge with that is that's not going to grow a business. And when you're the one holding things up, you really have to find the way, okay, I can hold these balance beams up in the air, but if I lean too much this way, this one's going to suffer and it's going to fall. And honestly, I think it's just in part what is most important at that moment and what I'm most interested in the moment. There's been times where areas of my life or career have slacked off, and it's because I just haven't had as much of an interest at that time. My passion lied elsewhere. So I think it's just balance is something that's achieving balance, I think, is near impossible, but balancing more or finding a little bit more of a grounding element to it is most important for me.
I can appreciate that. I can imagine a lot of people listening in their respective careers have had those moments of trying to figure out where you have to figure out prioritizing what's most important versus what's going to keep your interest and where you're going to stay motivated. And I think a lot of people can connect to that. But I think one of the things that you mentioned was this idea of having systems and having consistency being really critical to success. I think it's important that you're able to follow this freelance kind of lifestyle where you're nomadic and you're able to travel around. But in order to earn the ability to do that, I would guess that having those systems in place has to be a critical piece.
Yeah, I think if we look back to like paths of success or people who have become very successful at what they've done, usually somewhere there lies an element of discipline in their training that got them to be where they were. And that's been such a huge part of my background and my upbringing was playing sports. And, there was a few pivotal times in my life where I experienced these really great struggles. And that led to my systems, which carried me forward with stuff. If you look, in my case, hairdressers, Vidal Sassoon, one of the most renowned hairstylists in the world, everything was based off of system and discipline and almost mastering a certain thing. And that's great for that focus. And then, maybe on another side, there's a different balance of systems that work. So I think that having those systems really just instill a discipline to work forward and have a better work ethic that allows you to be a little bit creative. So you're not struggling as much.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think a lot of people, as they go into their careers, whether you're a creative or whether you're working in an industry that's really structured, they do have that creative side in them. They want to explore and they want autonomy. But there are disciplines to these careers and these fields. And I think, when I think of artists like Picasso, if you look at some of his earlier work, it was probably more traditional, right? Classically trained. And once he had the discipline, he was able to really move forward and go on and really do pieces of work that, of course, his name he has one of those singular names, and he's household and he's world renowned, and his work has lived on well beyond his time. So that idea of, if you're interested in an area, really being disciplined and earning the ability to be creative and to take liberties. So there's something else that I think you kind of teed us up for this next part, which is you talked a little bit about your sports background. And so I'm kind of curious about your background as far as kind of your upbringing and what brought you to this career path.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up a family of 3 boys, middle child, played sports since I can remember. And my parents always gave us really everything we needed to be successful with sports. We grew up comfortable, but not without, but definitely not of luxury. And so there was a work ethic that was in kind of us from day one. And my main focuses were soccer and hockey. I played some lacrosse. I did some taekwondo, and then some other street sports. But really, I think my biggest impactful things were with soccer. And I was always a gifted soccer player in probably, I would say, middle school area. My dad came to me and said, look, we can put you on a higher level team, get you at another level of expertise and play with these higher caliber players. Or I can continue coaching and we can do this thing. And that was, I think, like the first real jump for me, because no longer was I the coach's son, known to be the best one on the team. I was thrown in a very uncomfortable position for me, being one of the least I would say, impactful people on the team at the time. I was like the slowest. And my first introduction to this team was, there was a test that was running 2 miles in 12 minutes or under. Okay. I had never run 2 miles straight for time before. I just played soccer. Right. And so I show up day one to this training camp for this team. I'm probably, again, maybe 14, 13 years old. And we do the 2 mile run, and I thought I was going to die. Like, I had the feeling of my legs had the lactic acid built up. I couldn't move. And every lap we went around the coach, he just kept telling me, damn it, got to get faster, Drew. Got to get faster, son. And we just, that level of like disappointment. And thankfully I wasn't the slowest. I was second to last. But,
okay.
you know, the first, having that be your first impression, when this guy, you know, brought me on his team, knowing I was skillful, but seeing this big gap in my fitness, and something started clicking in it. And I started, every time we would have to run it, I would end up having this, this sense of fear come up, and this like anxiety, knowing I was going to have to do it. And so I played sports, and I would say that's when I started really having this impact on my work ethic. And so I continued playing soccer through high school, and ended up cutting my own hair for a lot of my own friends in high school. I started cutting hair for my French teacher's hair. And I went to college, went to three different schools, spent 5 years in school. And when I was playing soccer on scholarship and getting a business degree, I continued cutting friends' hair, really just at parties. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I just was always doing what I thought I wanted or what felt right. And my friends would come to me and say, hey, I feel like this, or I want more of this, you know, textured feel. I want this spikier. And I just kind of was going off of my intuition and kind of watching what other people had done to my hair. And so it comes time, I'm graduating, and I'm speaking to like financial investment. I was speaking to Edward Jones about going in to work with somebody there. And I'm speaking to a good friend of mine who's a hairdresser, and kind of going back and forth between these two worlds. And I was actually going to take the job going into the finance world. Spending a 5th year in college, always knowing I wanted to have success with finances. I was going to take this job and quote unquote grow up. Right. So I go down to my dad's office, and I open the door, and he's like, so what are you going to decide? Are you going to take the job or go back to hair school? I said, you know what, I'm going to take the job. And he took his glasses off, and he put his pen down, and he said, don't take that job. And that completely surprised me, because, you know, for me, I'm expecting do the secure thing, be responsible, set things up. Right. And he says, don't take that job. You have something different about you that is unique, that I don't think that job would do service for. And he said, that job's always going to be there. He's like, go back to hair school, try it. You seem crazy about it. You've always been creative, and we'll support you. You can live here while you continue to move forward. So that was like, you know, a huge rush. I ended up going to hair school, falling in love with hair, and very quickly becoming an artist for a major brand, L'Oreal Professional, like 6 months out of school. And things just started really rolling. And it was because people gave me that confidence, or that opportunity, or they saw something in me, and they weren't afraid to support it, speak up about it, or give me a shot or something. So I'd really, after that, I started educating for L'Oreal Professional. I was building a client in St. Louis, building clientele in St. Louis. Excuse me. And I started having this passion for what else is out there, because the hair industry is so crazy. One of the most beautiful things about it is you can do so many different things and have so much success and never get bored with it, because there's always whether it's a new client, whether it's new fashions, new invention, like technology. And one of the things that I love is when I'm doing photo shoots and doing different fashion ideas or concepts and editorials, there's a never ending possibility of list of things you can do. It always allows you, you know, if it allows you to go there as far as what you're shooting, but you can kind of create whatever you want. It's a fantasy. It's a different glimpse into another world, which I also think is why it can be so detrimental in a negative way to only do certain things in the realm of what's real for certain industries. But I think that it's a beautiful career that's led me to this like string of opportunities that people were able to put in front of me. And I was able to fortunately have either the skill set or the sense of I can let go of this to go pursue this, so that I could go walk through those doors. And so I'm having some successes, even though I don't use that term enough with myself, speaking about best, worst things. I don't always give myself enough credit, but I've had enough successes to where people from the outside looking in would say, wow, that's cool. Like, look at all that. And I'm, my personality is just like, cool. Yeah, but that's done. What's next and where are we going? And so I think that was one of the big things with starting the brand Cruxe, was having something else to work for and build that is outside of myself, and that can continue to feed the people it's going to feed. And whether that's, hairstylists buying a comb that challenges what the industry is currently using, challenges how brands are bringing it to the industry, and changes how hairstylists, creatives, artists can think in a world when, hairstylists are meant to have X number of clients a day. And years ago, everything was managed by the salon. Things were running different. Now, the amount of stresses that are on hairstylists, it's like you're supposed to show up and look apart, yet still be authentic and original, to keep a schedule, not run behind, have people show up late. They want more things in less time in general, because they're also more educated on, even if it's right for them or their hair, they have more information, right? So they have more data. And even more so now, like the power and the opportunity that hairstylists have to either connect or have a very volatile scenario post-COVID is a little bit more real. I think people are even more so really vulnerable and sensitive. And for hairstylists to be able to really take all of that world in and digest that on a daily basis with new energy and new people, this is something that our industry really has addressed, but it's also new. And, one of my unfair advantages of my experiences. I've had such vast experiences that I'm so blessed and grateful for, that I've seen little golden nuggets along my way. And I'm just kind of collecting those dots and then saying, okay, put them all on the table and say, what do we have? And so I think the brand, although its goals are still present and focused, I think it's always evolving and morphing into seeing new problem solutions or new opportunities for growth. And so that's kind of where we are today.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What's one thing that I find really striking in the earlier part of what you're sharing is, as you transition from being first of all, the 2 miles in 12 minutes, really?
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought. That was my first reaction too.
I got tired just hearing it. Yeah. But the other piece, of course, is, as you think about pushing finance versus hairstylist and hair school, and the idea of, maybe it's time to grow up and get a job in the finance industry, that must have been a pretty scary prospect, or just maybe just a really important turning point. But what keeps coming to mind is people seeing you. And in this case, your dad seeing you. Like, he saw you because he took his glasses off. I mean, I was just visualizing it when you told that story. He took his glasses off and he kind of looked at you and said, don't take that job, right? And then he explained to you what he saw in you, and that you have this thing that you really need to go explore. Like, he didn't want you to lose that opportunity. And so if you could just tell me a little bit more about your family and kind of, it sounds like you have a really supportive network of people. Yeah,
you know what? I couldn't be more blessed when it comes to my family. My parents are both from the St. Louis area, and from an early age, I was fortunate. I had two sides of family that were pretty connected. There wasn't a lot of family separation and, not a lot of fighting. I had family in Collinsville, Illinois, and in Florissant. And so from an early age, there was a strength within our family. It was a community, and, every holiday, every chance we got together, and they would always be supportive in seeing us at games. And so I think that there was a really nurture and labor of love that came from doing whatever they could to support us. And that, that started, my mother left home when she was 14 to go skate in the ice capades in Arizona with her grandmother. And so I think there's a lot of sacrifice that was instilled in our families. And, I remember far less nights where my parents were at home, relaxed, cooking dinner and relaxing with the family, as opposed to one parent was driving a kid to this game, one parent was picking up dinner, dropping off. And so I think, there's so much that can be said for that. And moving into adolescence, I think that my parents did a really good job of allowing us to be who we were within reason. And they just asked us or, gave us room to nurture that. My older brother, who now lives in Norway, he, think was the maverick at the time, challenging my dad and paving a little bit of a path for me and my younger brother, Tyler, to kind of follow and see what he was doing. And they, I think, clearly saw that we were all very different people. And they tried to celebrate us for who we were and allow us to do what we wanted while still kind of keeping us under the roof and all in love. Because me and my older brother had years where we wouldn't get along, and they would just kind of let it go. They wouldn't try to force us. They would just say, they'll come around, they'll be fine. And it was a few years. It was a long time. But I think that by them not forcing us to do certain things and just supporting us, it really allowed us to kind of shine and come through. And I think that's why I was able to be seen, because they encouraged me to draw when I was younger. They gave me paint sets, they gave me the soccer balls, whatever. And they let us just taste and experiment and see what it was we liked. And so by that time, they were able to have an accurate look from the outside and say, hey, this is what I've noticed over the course of your upbringing and the things that you've continually gone back to. Don't throw those out. Don't put those out of the window. And so I'm very, very blessed. I'm fortunate, and thankfully, family's still healthy. My parents still live in St. Louis. I have my younger brother married and have a beautiful daughter, lives in St. Louis. Then I have my older brother lives in Norway with 2 beautiful daughters and a wife. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm blessed with the people around me.
It does sound like you're blessed, and you have such an amazing family. And I think for parents who are actually listening to this, I know that, I'm sure people who listen to this podcast are listening for a wide variety of reasons, but there's some pretty good jewels there on parenting. This idea of, exposing your children to a lot of different ideas and allowing them to be themselves. This idea of not forcing them to be a certain way. Sometimes as parents get tempted to, push our kids to turn down a certain track to make them just like us. But the idea of not forcing, but just really supporting and providing some guidelines and some shelter and some other things, and maybe nudging you back in line when needing to, but allowing you all to work things out and to develop as autonomous people who are going to go on and track your own lives is super impressive. And, I just can't help that. When you said your mom left to go with the ice capades in Arizona at such a young age with your grandmother, I can't help but think, wow, experiences like that must have influenced you and your willingness and ability to transition and move around and to be able to have the career and lifestyle that you actually have.
Yeah, I'm very close to both of my parents, and I think I definitely was influenced hearing her story of doing that, because that's something that not many young women or girls would get the chance or the opportunity to do that. And the combination of, where our family stayed pretty much in the St. Louis area. And all of a sudden, myself, my younger brother, my older brother, as soon as we grew up, we just dispersed. We couldn't get away fast enough, but it wasn't because we were running. We just were, I want to go out and experience and explore, because they've just kind of allowed us, they've put that in front of us. And my older brother still hasn't been back since he moved away. He's been traveling and living around the world. I've been in New York, and my younger brother lived in Australia for a bit and has found that St. Louis is a good spot for him at the moment. So it took away that it's a balance of it again, right? Going back to, there's both sides. It took away the fear of going and pursuing. However, it also, it hurts, and it's hard to leave family and leave home. And to, thankfully, I haven't seen my parents prior to last month. I hadn't seen them for 8 months. That was the longest I had gone in 8 years. I usually was back there every few months, if not less. So it makes you appreciate things more when you have that freedom and you go, and then you kind of you realize, okay, it wasn't about running away. It's just like, it's that respect. I'm still here. I'm still coming back, but you've allowed me the courage to go chase my dreams and to do stuff.
I really love that. It's really incredible. It's also, again, I think about my son who's 21 and he's gone on to school. I left California to go to school in the Midwest. My son left St. Louis to go to school in another state, and my mother left another country to come to the United States. And so, as you start, you see through your kids and provide that space similar to what you appreciated in your experience. There's something else that you said regarding the consumer, and I know you're working with consumers in a variety of different aspects, whether it's clients or whether it's other businesses or again, whether it's your brand. The idea that they have access to data, and so they can be maybe a more informed consumer. And so I kind of want to switch back to that before we get to our last segment, which is from a business perspective. How are you keeping up with this more informed consumer, this consumer that has access to information on their phone, to so many gigabytes of information and data? How do you make sure that your businesses and your company continues to satisfy and meet the needs while also expressing your expertise?
That's a really great question. I think I'm trying to do that in two different areas of my world. I'm trying to do that as Drew, the hairstylist, and in that capacity, and I'm trying to do that with Cruxe, this other endeavor. And I think there's a lot of parallels between both of them. And the most important one that I would say at the moment is a certain sense of authenticity. If you look at the hair industry and kind of like the before and after photos that we all see a lot of people really utilizing, they start to look the same after a while because of the way that trends work and the way that people follow the influential people that they follow. And we start to see a sense of just continuous monotony. And then that's when like the numbing happens and you just stop feeling something from all of this scrolling. And so anything really related to the brand, my focus is to catch people's attention and make them feel something. And it can be good and bad. And then, one of the components of the brand is embracing those heavy parts, those spots of struggle and the dark, and then really celebrating the light and embracing the healing that can come from the purity of white. And so I think when it comes to, say, content or doing a video or even putting something out there, whether it's a sentence, putting it out there that's going to benefit whoever's on the other end, whether they're going to look at it and feel an emotion that they can connect with again, or they're going to say, wow, nothing's ever been presented to me like that. And I think, for myself, it's about a sense of individuality and capturing people's attention again. It's, we consume so much, and you said the word data. We consume so much data that we don't know what's right and wrong anymore. It's just floating in our head, and we don't remember what source we got it from. The reliability of stuff is questionable most of the time anyway. So it's just stuff and data in our head, and trying to find a little bit of clarity and maybe put out a little bit less stuff, or, hey, this is X, look at it, it's pretty, but it's never going to do anything, and creating a different connection. And, for me, I've never really been content or comfortable putting myself on camera, on social media, and being on video. And there was just a wall that it just was like, it was a hard thing for me to do. And that's something I'm working on. And that seems to really be proving that it's going really well. A lot of my people, a lot of my followers, a lot of my salons, a lot of my clients, even my colleagues and people who see when I share something on social media that is for no reason other than to try to have someone else on the other end connect with that and do something cool with it. I get a lot of really good feedback, and, it's not about, yes, it's about building cash flow and revenues as a business, but it's about building connections, because that's the stuff it's going to last, and it's going to withstand the test of time. And what I also know is that people don't buy things. People buy people or ideas that produce things. And so everything now, that when I'm looking at it, I'm still going back to the why. Like, what's the why of it, instead of just putting something out there? And sometimes it is just simply, hey, here's a cool image. Thought you'd like it. Or it's like, hey, there's this. We're testing the idea of this. Like, what are you testing? How's everything going for you?
Thank you. Yeah, I've heard somebody recently in a talk for the United Way talk about what's your why, and I think that intentionality is really important. You have a way with words, and one of something you talked about when it comes to content was, this scrolling effect of as you're monitoring the same thing over and over again. In this case, maybe it's a particular hairstyle or, for a certain time, how there's this numbing effect. And that I put in my notes here versus creating alternatives, providing a little spiking difference and uniqueness and being authentic, which brings back people's awareness and attention and snaps them out of that, just the mundane, same old of everything. And so I think that's such a creative way of looking at how do you create new content, new styles, new art in a way that's captivating and keeps people alive. It actually, wakes us back up, which is really important. I think we've all had the numbing experience of scrolling through our social media, and then you catch something that catches your attention, and so that's a great way to illustrate it. So we're going to take a little break here before we get to the big question.
It just takes a minute. Switch becomes yesterday, because it's just an ego walking. We don't need to run, we don't have to fight. I just want to live my life, but still I'm heading for
All right, so Drew, as you know, this podcast is called The Best Worst Thing, and the whole idea behind it, of course, is we want to give our guests the chance to share a challenge, whether it's personal or professional, that they experienced. So a setback or anything where you had to go through this difficult experience. So we want to know what the experience was, the what, how did you get through it, the how, and then what were the lessons, the what again, what were the lessons you learned along the way that you want listeners to hear about? So Drew, what was your best worst thing?
My best worst thing was my struggle going from middle school soccer into high school soccer. Up until middle school, I was always a gifted and talented soccer player that was able to have success, and moving into another level, going into private school, I needed to up my level and play with better players. And so in discovering this best worst case scenario or best worst scenario, I was the worst player on the team from day one as far as fitness. And my skill set was at a place where I was just good enough to be there, but I wasn't thriving. And so I found myself with this absolute anxiety driven dilemma of, in order to play for this team, I have to now get myself in a fitness place, get my fitness to a level that I can gain the confidence to be put in the game. And then also have my talent and my skill set keep me in the game. And so the word anxiety just keeps coming to mind because it was so much pressure, finding myself in this uncomfortable position of not being in the top, but being towards the bottom. And I found myself looking for the easy way out early on. I found myself saying, I'm running this 2 mile run and I'm second from last. I feel like there's battery acid in my veins. I'm about to pass out. My knee hurts. What happens? And having those ideas cross my mind even. And that was one of the first times that I had felt that, and where I had really faced something in front of me that was of that stature that it's like, okay, we got to climb up this. Like it's either do it or we're not going to play anymore. And once I got over the initial hurt and pain and embarrassment of where I was, and I just started putting my head down, I had the soccer coach at the time, Charlie Clark, Charlie, if you hear this, I love you, man. Miss you. He was just brutal. He was the best supportive, brutal guy for us, just calling it how it was. And telling us that us young punks weren't going to be able to play in high school at the level we were going. And he kicked our asses. He taught us a hard lesson. And from sixth grade until, or what was it, seventh or eighth grade until my senior year of high school, my 2 mile run went from like 13 minutes to 10:23. And I earned within myself this level of confidence, and it became obsessive. Not to be confident, but it became obsessive to feed this part where I had complete control of. Because in a soccer game, it was really, there was it's a dynamic and beautiful sport, and energy flows, and the passes really create this beautiful scene sometimes. And that's hard to predict. But what I could control was this 2 mile run. And I knew that this was becoming my enemy. And that carried me through my dedication to fitness and having that mentality, loving the Rocky movies and the underdog movies, and going to a place in my mind when I had that fear come up of, no, I'm going to be unstoppable. And it was like a stubborn, pig-headed mentality. And sometimes it probably took me away too much from focusing on soccer, in all honesty. It was just, it was driven, but that was the first time I had faced it, overcome it, become one of the fastest, if not the fastest players on the team. And that's what carried me through to college. And I had an amazing, solid soccer career in college. So the initial onset and that fear, now when I feel that come up, I can recognize it much more. And it's a little bit harder to face it the same way. When things come up, whether it's in personal or in business, you can't just run at the wall every time. You have to have a little bit of a smarter approach. However, that same mentality of that, obsessive, I need to not let this defeat me, I want to conquer this, that's enabled me to go to war with myself, as well as when things show up in the world.
Thank you. Still 13 minute 2 mile, which I would say for me would be, it'd be an incredible, it'd be great. It'd be a feat, right? To 10 minutes, that's an amazing output. But you mentioned Coach Clark being a particular person who found a way to push you, and somehow it seems like his voice that was external somehow got internalized. The idea that, one other thing that really stands out to me as well is you had this crossroads moment where you could say, oh, my knees hurt, there's so many other things, just because, even though your standard was second to last versus being last is better than nothing, but you could have made a lot of excuses, and you had to make a critical decision that you were either going to get better or it was done for you. And so I'm kind of curious for you at that moment, being that this was the first time that you had actually experienced this sensation. Do you know where that came from? Do you know what pushed you through those moments? Where that came from?
I think fear was a big motivator. Fear can be equally as paralyzing as it is motivating. And I think fear started to shake my confidence in certain areas that I couldn't control. Case in point, on the soccer field, as soon as I would make an error, my confidence would just get ticked down a notch, right? And it's kind of like money in the bank. If there's not enough in there in the beginning and you start to lose some, you start to kind of let it affect you. And so I think I've probably internalized a lot of those feelings, and I've internalized my coach's voice simply because I remember hearing it in my sleep, of him just yelling at us. And it came from a place of love. And, when I say yelling, it certainly was, he would cuss, and it was authentic and raw and crazy, but it was out of love, because he was like, you know what, I care about you and I love you and I want you to do that. And I think that also was another thing, because, I had other coaches down the line that didn't come from that same place of love. They may have come from a good place of wanting to win and not meaning any harm, but their ability to connect with people of, say, a younger maturity, puberty, adolescence, it didn't instill confidence in the people who needed it. It broke them down more. And so he had this uncanny ability to beat us down, break us down, but while still lifting us up so that we took it on us, or at least that's really how I took it. So I think it's that, and there's always having this idea. I was listening to another podcast, and David Goggins, I don't know if you're familiar with, is an incredible athlete.
Yeah.
And his mentality is something that I am very far from being a fraction of what he is in how he does what he does. But there's a certain sense of the mentality of, I want to see people watch me doing what I'm doing and be so shocked that I'm not dying, or be so shocked that I'm still going. And so it was almost like, okay, if people were watching me right now, would they be impressed, or would they just be like, yeah, that's no big deal? And so it's just like, it kind of feeds a certain, I don't know, it could be even alternate personality that you go into when you're in those scenarios. And I think that that's continued to be a huge, huge part for me.
Yeah, David Goggins talks about kind of trying to be uncommon amongst uncommon men, and just he has a whole different kind of level, but I think there's a lot of inspiration to that. There's something else that you said earlier regarding this incredible challenge of shifting to the next level, where you were coming from a place where you were kind of a star athlete, and then you leveled up and you were average, if not on the low end, at least when it came to fitness. But you also had to pay attention to your skills as well. So you had to kind of up these two different areas. And the one thing you said was, I needed to focus on areas I could control, and I could control these 2 miles, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I was not doing well. I was second to last in that, and I knew that I could control that. And so, and it sounds like that's also something that when you have those nerves, when anxiety comes up again in the workplace and your businesses, and where you bear down, and that's where you kind of really get focused on the things that you can control, and you kind of double down on that. And I think that level of intensity, tenacity makes for great leadership, to be honest with you. I heard this idea of, confidence to a certain level, but there has to be a certain level of optimism that comes along with the idea that there's a possibility that this could get better and I can get through this. But there's one thing about that tenacity, that just get after itness, that this is going to suck a little bit, but I know that I can conquer this. And so I'm going to bear down and focus on what I can focus in on, and I can get past this thing and probably maximize this experience based on the things that I can control. And I feel like that's really impressive. I don't know if that resonates with you or not, if I'm catching you right.
Yeah, thank you. It does. And I think that along those lines, I think having a goal to allow yourself to work towards has found to be really important for myself, as of lately. Even doing physical exercise, and later after college, I started getting heavy into weights, and I found that same obsessive discipline with weights the way that I did with the running test. And I find that anytime that I am doing more with my physical, it allows me to be more disciplined in every other aspect of my life, which also gives me space to be creative. When I've had periods of my life where I'm not working out, and, whether I'm either sleeping in a little bit more, or I'm just wake up, make coffee, and don't really get my body moving, I lack a certain sense of focus and clarity that happens. And it's just almost like two different versions. It's almost night and day. And I don't feel like we always have to be so rigid and disciplined, because I see a lot of opportunity for the moments of allowing yourself to stay up till 3 a.m. on something that your mind's focusing on, and skip the workout, or to go that route. But I think that the sense of when I'm working out, I'm a better version of myself all around in general. And I think that tenacity also spills over into every aspect of our lives. And so it just fuels everything.
Yeah, it gives you this certain level of confidence. I know for me, I do probably 6 days a week. And whether it's running some long distance, or maybe whatever I can do, pandemic style workouts at home, I've accumulated some equipment. The feeling that I've developed over the last couple of years has been, if I can do this, get through this 5 mile run, or get through this hour workout and a little bit of a walk, I've accomplished something today. I've accomplished so much, and it sends me into my work day where I'm actually getting paid on the job with so much confidence, because I've really achieved much more than a lot of people are going to make an effort to do. I've done it, and I always describe it as, but by the time I'm done with my morning routines of moving my body and listening to podcasts and doing whatever it is that I do for my morning routine, I feel like I'm a success. So by the time I get to work, I'm getting paid time and a half. I'm getting paid overtime and life on service, on being able to contribute to the world or to help people out. And it's just an important place to be. But I really connect with this idea of like just the body. And I don't care if it means that you have to walk for 15 minutes a day, if that's all you can do, or if there's something more rigorous that you can do. But getting your body going and not ignoring that we are full human beings with a body-mind connection. And however we're able to take advantage of that is really critical. And so I appreciate that that's still an aspect of your life, even though you've moved into this other creative side of your life as well.
Yeah, you said the word creative, and in my eye or in my head and my beliefs before, I used to think creative person is somebody who's maybe not working out. They probably drink too much. They maybe smoke too much. They're in like they're a little bit more abstract. And I'm challenging myself to reimagine what creative is. And because there's ways of being creative with your workout. There are ways of being creative with how you approach something and not what you do during it or why you do certain things. And so I think that word just brought that up for me, because I think that it gives space, but it also, creativity feeds creativity. And when you change how you're thinking about things, the results change and your process changes. So I think it's really important just to allow yourself to that kind of self-love to do those things, and then realize that you don't have to do all the really abstract off the wall stuff to be creative.
That's great. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. I mentioned a couple of your Instagram and Twitter account. Is there any other place that you want to push people towards getting hold of you, following you?
No, just follow me on Instagram. I also started a TikTok, trying to do some different unique hair things and refreshing. So it's Drew Schaefering on TikTok, and Cruxe brand on social media, and cruxebrand.com for any of your hair needs as far as styling tools or lifestyle things that challenge the status quo in the hair industry and kind of bring a different inspiration to creatives in our industry.
Thank you so much, Drew, for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Joshua.
Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Walewa. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at BoomNote on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cool Jets Audio and Visual. You can follow them at CoolJetsAV on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
This one's for the good times and this one's for the bad. This one's for the day that was